Hello, everybody. So my name's Chris Vervoort, and this is my wife, Jen. So we farm near Arthur, Ontario, which is about an hour northwest of Toronto. So we have a flock of sheep here that we manage, along with a few other sideline businesses. So the way we got involved with EweManage back in 2017, I believe it was, we were seeking out software to manage our own flock. We kind of looked at a lot of the options out there, and in our search, we came across what was actually called Bergier, which is a French-based software. Bergier was developed in Quebec and has been working successfully there for 15 plus years. So when we inquired about it, we worked with Jacques, the developer of the software, to translate the software, and as a result, we have EweManage. And when it was translated, that's when we started working with Jacques to support the software in the English version of the software. We currently have users nearly in every province, and several users in the US. So it's been very a lot of strong uptake of the software. I would say EweManage it's an advanced software. It does a lot, and it requires effort from the users, same as any other accounting programs and things of that nature. So basically, the amount of effort you put in is what you'll get out. If you're looking for something very basic, EweManage might not be for you. It is a very advanced software, and the users that are putting the effort in, they're getting a lot of data back out. So I'm just Jen's backup here. I kind of look after things on the farm, and Jen's the brains of the operation, and so I kind of help her when I can, but I'll pass it off to Jen, and she'll show you the software.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. I guess I'm going to start out by saying that EweManage is only works in kgs. So that's one of the most common questions is, can we use it in pounds? But so it's in kgs. Can everyone see my screen at the moment?
Say welcome to EweManage.
Yes, that's what I see.
Yeah, okay. All right, so EweManage is unique in the way it is the only sheep software that will declare tags to CCIA and ATQ. And it does that through email and computer-to-computer communications. So the first screen here is some notifications on your flock production, and you enter your criteria into the system, and then your reports and calendars all feed off that information. So just for an example, this is a test flock, so not everything is up to date, but here's an example of a few notifications that come up saying that some animals aren't meeting my criteria or my goals in my flock. So there's a last lambing report here where my mouse is, and then ewes that have missed their lambing objectives. So there's above the line, it's a bunch of tag declaration notifications, and then below is your flock performance notifications, I guess. So we start out in the software with the main record. There's two main databases in the system. So there's your flock, which is your breeding animals, your ewes and your rams. And then there's another database, and that contains all your lambs and information. And it basically comes down to the different activities that you would do within each flock, subflock. So I guess check my notes here.
So this is the main screen.
Yeah, so this is your main screen, but it's also lamb information. I guess so. We'll start out with going over the farm profile.
This will be your
Which one?
this screen.
Okay, so I'll go back and explain the main screen. So your basic ewe record information is on the front here. So your basic sire, dam, birth date, and tag ID. I can just go through some ewe records here with some tag numbers. Yeah, so your basic ewe information, like I said, is in here. There's different activity buttons down here, depending on what you need to do. So if you're entering breeding information, you enter in a date, and it kind of calculates when the lamb's due, or when the ewes due to lamb. Some breeding information, the ram, and then it actually gets into a little bit of genotyping if you're tracking any of that information. Ultrasounding, you enter in some scan dates or some exposures, and it kind of estimates, again, like it'll overwrite your breeding if the scanner or ultrasound technician diagnoses a certain number of days in pregnancy. You can sort everybody by positive and negative scan results. You can manually enter in some lambing information. So you start out by entering how many lambs the ewe has had. You enter a tag number, and then it kind of pre-fills, and there's different screens you progress through to enter some lambing information. All these activity buttons will create a note in a history field down here. So whatever you do to the ewe, or whatever happens to that ewe in her life, there is a record made down here. What's nice and a unique part about this section here is you can use a search function, and you can search a certain lambing on a certain date, and it'll bring up all the records in your system that have lambed on that date that you search for, or whatever keynote that you type into their comment section. Down on the bottom right-hand corner here is some lambing statistics. So basically, your lambing information and then weaning weights, and it's all kind of calculated and averaged in a statistics table here.
Search function.
Okay, yeah. So because this is a used record, it's also it's kind of set up kind of like a deck of cards. So you have a stack of cards that you've selected to work with. So say we're working with a certain group. I'll go to this screen here, and I have all my groups broke out and how many animals are in each group. And then you can select a group, and you go back to the main screen, and then this number here indicates how many records or cards you're dealing with or working with. So you can scroll through each individual record that you've selected in your group. So here's a couple different records. Over on the far left-hand side here, or sorry, far right-hand side, sorry, is all the lambs that are pertaining to that used record. I can just open this up a bit. Oops, sorry guys. So every animal that she has raised is listed in the right-hand corner here, or right-hand side. If her lambs are raised artificially, it goes on to a different record, which is called the feeder in EweManage. So basically it's a artificial use record where all your bottle raised lambs are recorded. So down in the lambing statistics table, it'll say how many she's raised, or how many she's given birth to, how many she's raised, and they'll be listed here. And then that, if it's 3, the third one will be recorded in the feeder record. All right. As I stated when we first started, there's a a farm profile, or a farm profile here. Can everyone see this screen?
Should say producer's identification in the top left corner.
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just share my screen. Okay, so
There you go.
here's all your producer information. And then you kind of go through the different tabs and you can dedicate the system to your production cycle or system. So the first tab is your producer information. The second tab is whether you want to declare tags to the national traceability system. Slaughterhouses and auctions is where you would enter your final destination for lambs based on their premise IDs. The lambing profile is what generates all your reports. So you would enter in your lambing information, your breeding information, and then all your reports kind of go off this information. So for example, if you wanted your flock to be lambing 1.5 times a year, you would enter in the lambing interval in days. And yeah, it bases your, like those notifications when you start up the system. Those reports are based off this information. So you just kind of enter some standard information. There's default examples next to give you a guideline. But this is, yeah, your basic information that you can change and customize. So there's a weight tab as well. So if you're focusing on your 50 and 100-day weights, whether the way the system brings your weights in from certain files, there's a calendar that you can set to set off certain alarms when you open the system. The next couple of tabs are if you're a Genovis user and you register animals. This software works pretty good for purebred producers, keeping track of registration papers and registration numbers and transferring registration papers.
The software creates files to send to Genovis NCLRC for your registrations and your Genovis records.
So then if you're a milk producer, there's also a milk section that records milk qualities and volumes. And then there's actually a feed chart here, if you want to get into technical
Cost of productions, calculations.
and calculations. Yeah.
So that's honestly something we haven't really got into ourselves too much, but it is in the software too, but.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the main screen.
To share screen.
And share my screen.
So you should be back to the use record here.
Yep, it's on that record now.
Does anybody have any questions? Questions kind of guide me in the right direction if I'm answering anybody's thoughts or questions. If not, I'll just keep going, I guess. So the software is basically used on the computer, and then we have data collection tools that you take to the barn and you collect your data, and then you transfer these files back to the computer. So it's basically emails, or you can plug in like with a USB cable, and then you import your data from the barn. So we go into an import export screen, which looks like this. And then I just thought I'd show you an example of a lambing file or some of the files you bring in from the barn. So this is some information I would have brought in from the barn. If I can make it bigger, it just gives you an idea. So you've scanned a use tag and you've scanned twins to the U. So that's these 2 rows here. Anything with a green background is your new information you're bringing in from the barn. And then anything on a white background is in your system already. So yeah, here's some basic information of a ewe that had some twins. If I scroll down a little bit, there's some numbers or IDs in red and orange. That's just indicating that I don't have it in the system yet. So it kind of sorts information out as you're bringing it in.
There's a question, Jen and Chris, that came into the chat box. The question is, could you please go through the process to enter lambs into the system?
Yeah. So I don't have a screen to share with the mobile device, but I can go back to the main record. If everybody can see that screen still.
Can you do the mobile in barn? Can you show it on here?
Oh, I can show you, yeah, the mobile in barn too. So there's a bunch of different ways you can use the system depending on the or depending on what you have at home. So EweManage is a Windows-based operating system. If you have a strong enough, like 8 RAMs of data, you can use a Windows tablet to run the system. So an example of a screen for like the Windows tablet is this. I don't know if you guys can see that though. Share screen. Okay, so this is an example of the in barn mode and what you would look at on a screen in the barn on an iPad or an iPhone. So I would have to have the use tag and I would have to scan it in. So you would take your RFID reader, you would scan the number in, it would bring up her information, and then you would follow through the commands. I would,
Go through it.
well, I would need a use number. I can go back to I'll go back to the main screen and I'll show you how to do it manually on the computer. It's all set up for actually scanning tags in. I'll go back. Oh, no, that's not what I'm gonna do. Oh, sorry, I just exited my software. It'll just be a minute to open it back up. Okay. Screen. Okay, so going back to the main U record, I'll go up to my groups and I'll select a U. One of these U's. Okay, so here's a record. So I go to the lambing button and I'm going to type in that she had 3 lambs. You would type in the ID of the lamb. And it'll auto-populate the next digits after, like if you're taking them in sequence. So hit lambing. She was born, the lamb was born today. We didn't have any stillborn, so I'm going to hit continue. And then you would enter weights and sex of the lambs. So I'm just going to change the sex of one of them. You would enter your weights. And then continue. Do I want to transfer any of the lambs to the feeder? I'm going to say no, but if you had one of the lambs that was going to be artificially raised on a feeder or bottles, you would dedicate it to that feeder record that I mentioned earlier. And then here's your lambs record in the system. I need to share the screen. Okay, so here's the lambs record.
So that would be how we do it. If you're doing it on the computer in the house. With EweManage, we have apps for the Android and for the Apple. So we would generally we use the apps on our phone in the barn. Can you show you on there? Can we do that way?
In the barn?
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you asking if we could see?
Can you show them how to enter lambing on the app?
In the barn.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where I got thrown out.
You'll need a use number. Right?
Yeah.
We've lost your screen share.
Just trying to figure this out here.
Okay,
Sorry.
no,
I
just
lost-
to let you guys know.
No, thanks.
Too many different screens here. Okay, so here's a use record. Okay, there's a use number. I'm just going to go to the in barn mode and show you how to do it, how you would do it from a mobile device.
So we needed a tag number because if we didn't have that, then it would tell us the ewe didn't exist.
in the system. So for everyone starting out with EweManage, the first thing to do would be to populate the system with your use number or use ID. So Jacques would either do that upon purchase, or you would go through and scan them in using a purchase function.
So this would be an example. This is your Apple app, your iOS app. It looks a little bit different on a phone, but this is how it would show up. Look on an iPad.
So can everyone see the screen?
No, I can't see anything.
The lambing purchases. You have to share a screen again.
Yeah, this is.
There.
Did that work?
Nope,
Lambing purchases, scans, breeding.
I still just see you two.
Okay, 1 second here. Share screen.
There.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay. So this would be the Apple app that or the Android, sorry, the Apple app, the iOS app. So this is similar to what it would look like on your Apple phone as well if you were using that in the barn. So to enter lambing, we would select lambing. And then here we would scan the ewe. So I'm just typing in a ewe number here manually. 3, 4. So this is the next screen we would get. Sorry. So with our breedings pre-entered, the ram field here would already be, the ram that we bred to would actually already show up there. And the group that the ewe would be in would show up there, the alias. So the alias is a secondary tag, like your farm management tag. So we can use that farm management tag, or we can use the RFID tag. The system is kind of designed really to drive off the RFID tags. If we are doing pregnancy scanning, this would tell us how many she was actually scanned for when we did our scanning. So this is kind of handy, you know, if you've maybe got 2 lambs in the ground, you're not sure she's got another one, but you see she was scanned. Maybe check, you know, you go in and check for another one there. And then just comments for lambing condition. Sorry, that's all in French. Here's a feature here that we added in was the udder condition. So that's very basic udder scoring that shows up on all the apps. It's kind of really nice. It's just click on it. It's a 1, 2, 3. So good. You know, need further tests is kind of, it's functional, but not desirable. And then 3 is just about udder calling. This was a tool we added in shortly after we got onto it. And I found it's made huge strides in our flock on udder confirmation and quality. So once if all our information is correct on the ewe here, then we would go to new birth, and this would be where you would enter your lambs. So we would tag our lambs at birth, and right here where it says stillborn, that's a default, but we would scan the new tag in here. And
So just type in test 1. Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, and then we would change the sex, male, female. You select your weight. On the app, there's little toggle keys for up and down, so it's kind of a little easier. If we have any comments, we can write comments on the lamb. If we've taken a lamb and we've adopted it to another ewe, so for anybody that's doing a lot of cross fostering, we can actually scan that ewe's tag in here. So then what will happen is the ewe that dropped the lamb, she'll get credit for dropping it, but now the adopted mother will get credit for raising it. If we just pull the lamb and transfer it to the feeder, we would select yes or no on the app, or here it puts it into the adopted field, and that'll once again take it. The ewe will get credit for dropping it, but the feeder will get credit for raising it. And then just simply save. If she by chance, if her second lamb was a stillborn, if we don't touch this field, we kind of fill in the rest of our data and then just save again. Now that'll enter a save or a stillborn automatically to that ewe. And then, yeah, so now we can return back. We can go back to the main menu and we can list our lambs. So here's all the lambs that we have actually entered. So I guess she's had some other ones that she's been playing with here. So here's the lamb here, that 555, the top lamb, that was the lamb we just entered in, and we had transferred him to the feeder, and that was his natural mother, and then his birth. Because it wasn't an actual RFID tag, it didn't have enough digits, it stays as a house tag, which is just means it's a farm management tag. So later on, we would actually have to change that it's an RFID tag. So it's basically the same kind of screens for all the different functions. So maybe if we go into scanning, if we were going to ultrasound use, we would scan the ewe. And then if she was a negative or positive scan. On this screen here, I'm not sure why it doesn't have the days bred and the,
because it's not an actual ID.
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all designed to scan in an animal or type in an animal that's in the
Oops.
system.
What did I do? So on my app, on my phone, when I do this, if I scan that tag in, then I can say, I can record that she was, say, 50 days bred or 60 days bred or 120 days bred, whatever my ultrasound tech is. And I can also record the number of embryos that he's seen. And then we do a negative or positive or uncertain scan. So, oh, that's how you, sorry. I don't use this. So here she's positive, and we would say she's positive with 3 embryos. Sorry, this is a little different since the last time I played with this screen.
It's just a touch different on the computer.
And so we can say she has a negative scan, and it doesn't save it because she wasn't found in the database, but you kind of get the idea anyways. I'll let Jen back.
Does anybody have any other questions? I guess while we're, oh, that was a good question, actually. I'm gonna go back to the main screen. Okay, I'll go to the lamb block for a minute. It has similar, it has more activities pertaining to lambs, I guess. So if you're wanting to keep it as a breeding stock or a market lamb, and then it has an area where you'd enter your weights. So just to show you kind of what it looks like. Here, because the system is all designed around traceability, when you're selling animals to market, I don't know, say we ship this lamb that we just created, you would dispose of it, you would enter your disposal status, and then the tag becomes displaced. So there will always be a record of this animal that you shipped off your farm, but it will be inactive in the system. And then, so depending on the death status and what you assign the, sorry, I just have the Zoom menu up at the top.
Can you see the lamb screen?
Can you guys see the lamb screen? That I'm talking about?
Ashley, can you see the lamb screen?
Yep. So are you in it where it says like your mouse is by adjusted weight and supplement milk? Now you're up by management group.
Okay, yeah. So there's the main menu at the top of the screen. I just have it hidden behind my Zoom active like buttons, but there's a bunch of reports up there. And then based on how you sell your lambs, like if you sell them as replacements or you sell them to the abattoir or the sale barn, there's different reports that'll display how you've sold everything in the past year. I really wish I could get it there. Actually, is there a way that I can move the Zoom control panel out of the way? Oh,
There you go.
there we go.
Did you move it?
Yeah.
Yep, that worked. Sorry. Yeah, so I'll go back to some of the reports. I'm just going to select a bunch of lambs that are in the barn, and then I'll go up to my reports. Here's a report that I use very often. So it's basically a list of all your lambs in the barn. And then it's got what group they're in, how old they are, and then their 50-day, 100-day weights, and then control weighing. So EweManage has a control weight, which is basically any management weight other than your 50 and 100-day weights. You can select if you want your lambs as replacements or market lambs, like I mentioned earlier. So if you have it selected as a replacement, the color coding on the background of the tag is green. So all these green background animals were selected as replacements. And then you can just kind of go over their data. Depending on what column you select at the top, it'll sort the information. So if I want to look at 50-day weights, I click at the top and it'll sort everything from large, biggest to smallest. And then down at the bottom, there's an average of the group. So it would make more sense if I selected a smaller group. I go to, there's different graphs on different births throughout the year, and female and male.
So that, and to explain what the graphs are, so we can see.
I was just gonna go over it really roughly. Death causes. Okay, so it's a test flock, so I don't have it up to date, but there is different graphs. Like there's a pie graph displaying if you've sold replacement animals, and then sale barn animals, light lambs, heavy lambs. It kind of organizes and sorts that out. I'll maybe go back to the main.
Want to click into some of those graphs and just explain them?
Okay, where do you want me to go? Deaths.
So here's an example of a graph. It just death. It breaks out your deaths per month. So it's just an easy way to view what your flock's production, your management is in different times of the year as far as mortalities. Some other reports. That's another one for different types of deaths. So that's in this flock, the percentage of stillborns. The blue would be from 1 week to 1 month. The little pie on the bottom is 1 week. So it really kind of helps identify when your problems are actually happening in your flocks, and when you're doing your herd health with your veterinarians. It's kind of gives you a visual as to where your biggest problems are. So here's probably the number of stillborns is probably the biggest problem in this flock. Get some growth graphs.
I don't have up-to-date weights in here, so that won't work. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the reports in the main flock and just describe some of those reports. I just have to pick a group we use to work with. Okay, so I just brought up a report of a group of ewes based on their average or their kilo wean per year. And it kind of color codes your poor doing ewes, and then your average ewes are in the orange, and then your top performing ewes are highlighted in green. So again, you can sort the list by clicking on the top. So if you wanted to know number of lambings, you can sort by any of the criteria you see at the top. You have an option of classifying your ewes. So you could do it based on kilo wean per year, and the system will classify the ewes. And then there's a classification here from 1 to 5. And then so it basically outlines your best performing ewes based on weaning weights. And then you can identify replacements out of those ewes, and the system will do that too. So if I want to pick my top performing ewes out of a certain group, the system will select those ewes for you and identify them. A whole flock report would be the farm 12-month farm profile. So this is an overview of your flock within the last 12 months. So it kind of explains, I don't know, do you want to explain it?
So it's kind of a whole report card on your total flock. So it starts at the top, you know, the number of ewes in your flock, the active rams in your flock, the percentage of animals you've culled, the death percentage of your flock for the year, your retained breeding stock. And then when we get into the green here, you have the prolificity of your flock, number of lambings in season, out of season, kilos wean per lambing. This data is a little bit off because it's just kind of played with the lambing rates per your flock. Lambs percentage raised. This is kind of this one here is, I think, catches a lot of people off guard. A lot of people base their numbers off their initial drop rates on day one, but this kind of tells you actually how many are raised and out the door. And this is one that really catches a lot of people off guard. So I'll keep scanning down here. In the kind of brown is here again your death causes, and it breaks it out, you know, 1 to 10 days, 11 to 50 days, and then also by time of year. So you can really target when your problems are happening and when things you need to adjust. Then on the right hand column in the gray, this top in the tops on the right is the sales. So it kind of gives you a report on when you've sold your lambs of the year and what kind of weights throughout the year, so that you've been producing. And then the bottom right is kind of a neat, it's the productivity relative to the age of the flock. So if you look at it here, this really breaks out where you can find where your ewes are maybe starting to fall off the map as they're getting a little bit old. And it also gives you a pretty good visual as what your actual age of your flock is. In our own flock here at home, we found when we got into these 7-year-old ewes that our lambs raised per ewe was really starting to fall off. So that 7 years old in our own flock is where we really start looking at calling ewes out, because we know that we can see that their lifespan is starting to fall off, or their production is starting to fall off. So with this report card here, we can actually save, we can save a history. So it'll do like 3 years in a row. So then we can do some comparisons year over year, which is kind of interesting to look back on. Yeah, what do you got next?
There's one more report that I like. So this is a report based on the last lambing note of each ewe. So you go throughout your lambing and you type in a few notes as you're entering their data into the system, and you can go back and look at the notes that you've put on the ewe, and then you can kind of flag them as as good ewes based on what you're selecting for. So I kind of thought this was a neat little report. It's yeah, got some basic notes in here. Difficult lambing avoided. Huge lamb, yeah, whatever.
Whatever comments you entered when you're in the barn during your lambing, this is a spot to go back and look at everything.
For death and culling recording, there's different buttons here. So you can cull and say why they died and reasons, and kind of sort your information out that way. There's also a medical section on each of the records. And so every time you would do something to the ewe, it would be recorded. Every time you vaccinated a ewe, it would be recorded. You can record treatments in groups, functions, or individual animals, both on the mobile device and on the computer. So that kind of speeds up things if you have your groups all sorted out. It has a system in the medical section here where if you have weights on the ewes, it'll use the ewe's weight and it'll calculate dosages. So it's more accurate for when you're treating animals. If I go into the pharmacy.
Just a quick question, Jen, that came through. Someone asked, how long does this program keep records on the ewes?
Infinitely, like forever. So what you'll find is if you look up in the middle of the screen here that says the active flock, or click on it for the inactive flock. So we can search ewes that are in our active flock or our inactive flock. So it keeps it for forever.
Oh yeah, I'll bring up a main function in the system. So there's this find function, and you can search any piece of information on an animal or a ewe in the system. So I can search up displaced animals. So that's anything that's died or sold on the farm. And it'll bring up a list. So there's 838 animals in the system that were on the farm that are no longer here. So they're here forever. It's just kind of sorted out as displaced or active tags.
But they're still in the system.
Yeah, they're still in the system.
Yeah, a displaced tag won't be included in the
Report.
reports, so only the active tags. Good question. Keep those questions coming.
Okay, I forget what I was going to show next.
Well, you were doing the medical section.
Oh yeah, the medical section. Okay, so if I go into the pharmacy, which I'll make sure I can share my screen here. It's kind of set up like the farm profile where you enter in all your medications and dosages, and then issues you may have on your farm. And then if you have the weight in here, it'll calculate the dosage, and then basically you can go scan a ewe, say what's wrong, say what you think is wrong with her, and it'll bring up certain medications that you would, or suggested medications that you would use on that sheep or that animal with withdrawal period. So you would treat an animal, and then it would have a record of its withdrawal time in the system as well. So it'll say, do not ship this animal before this date. And then in order to pre-fill your pharmacy, you have access to the Canadian Veterinary Products Compodium. And if I can share my screen still here, I don't know.
I do, that shows.
Okay, sorry, I don't think it shows, but it's a live access to all the veterinary products that are approved for sheep in Canada. So it has a short form and it has dosages and all the drugs that are approved for sheep. So I would go in there, look up your drug, your dosages, and then enter them into the system. So now when you're in the barn and you have an issue with a ewe, you could say what you think is wrong with her, and it'll you can enter treatments and record them that way. And then, yeah, bring your information in, and it's all recorded on her record for her life. So then if you record all her treatments and you record all her vaccinations, and anytime you've done anything to her, it's all recorded here in her medical section with withdrawal dates. So if this this animal was treated and I go to her disposal record, it'll have this tab would be focused red or turned red, and there'll be a withdrawal date saying don't ship before this date. So yeah, I think that's about everything. Does anybody have any other questions? I guess I'll maybe go over another common question we get. There's a lot of people wanting to know about connectivity to scales and Bluetooth readers and scales altogether. We just sell the software. There is no real way to connect a reader and a scale to the software all in one shot without like hands-free. The reason being is it comes down to the Bluetooth ports, and most scale heads only have one Bluetooth connection. So the most practical and economical way to record your weights would be to scan your tag and then manually enter in the weight.
That being said, it can be done. It just takes a few more connections.
You have to be pretty technical to have it hands-free.
So ourselves here at home, with the number of U's we're running, like we're 600 U's. I even find myself, I use a handheld reader, Bluetooth to my Apple phone, and I scan the tags that way, and then manually enter the weights, and it's pretty quick actually. And most of our users, that's kind of what they're on. Another way we're doing it, we have another brand of scale, and where a scale head that actually collects the tags and the weights and puts it together, and then it exports a CSV file with a tag and a weight match to it, and we import that CSV file into EweManage. So that is another option of so somebody has a brand of scale that will collect a tag and a weight and match them up and export a file. That's possible too.
So I'll just show you that there is a screen for electronic scales. So if you have any one of these more common scale heads and you record all your weights and your tags, and you can use a USB stick to export it from your scale head, plug it into your computer, and then EweManage will accept any of these CSV files from a scale head as well. So yeah, with that, I don't know if anybody has any questions.
There's another one that came through. It says, what is the most common device people use in the barn during lambing, etc.?
So I would say the most common is most people are using either their phone, either an Apple or an Android phone. And then any reader that will Bluetooth to your phone. I would say the most common reader would be the Allflex LPR. It's a fairly simple reader, no screen on it. It's a very basic reader. I have 3 of them myself, actually. I use them for everything on the farm, for sheep, different barns. There's one in my truck. Yeah, so we have a couple of them kicking around. They work really well. So that would probably be the most common and simple setups.
Unfortunately, because of the pandemic,
we're having a hard time getting readers.
Yeah, we're having a hard time getting readers.
But yeah, that would be. But any reader that will Bluetooth to your phone. Some of the older readers, the connections are a little bit. They don't always like to talk. But most of the new readers are all pretty flexible that they'll communicate. Yeah, so that would probably the most common would be a phone and a Bluetooth reader. We also have a new device called the X6, which is basically looks like an Android phone with an integrated RFID reader into it. And we don't actually have one here at the moment. So that's basically replacing the Scion the Scion Workabout that a lot of people will be familiar with. The Scion Workabout was discontinued about 3 years ago. The company is still supporting it, and we have a software for it, but we're not really advancing it or putting any time. We're still supporting it until everything kind of works out of the system. But so the X6 is the replacement for that, and it's kind of it's working out pretty nice little nice device. It's got a touch screen on it, so basically an Android phone with a readers. So that's another option.
Yeah, the simplest way of collecting data.
Yeah, so that puts everything all into one hand, whereas if you're using your phone and another reader, takes some getting used to with two devices that you have to hold on to, but it's not really that bad, I guess, once you're kind of used to it.
There's another question that came through as well.
Okay,
It said, between different people in the barn, does the app communicate day-to-day happenings without being uploaded to a computer?
So the app is basically, I would call it, it's basically similar to a clipboard. And what you write on your clipboard is on your clipboard. So you have to upload into your database, and update the database, and then send your information back to your app, into your mobile device. So we do use multiple apps, like, so Jen will have it on her phone or on mine, and the challenge, you really have to watch that you're importing and exporting your data fairly regularly. For instance, if I treat a lamb and then say it dies a day later and Jen records the death, you kind of confuse the system if you don't bring that in the right order. Because if she brings her death in first and then my treatment file, the system says, well, the lamb doesn't exist anymore. So it's doable, but you just have to pay attention to that you're uploading your data accordingly. But yes, it does work that way. The other thing too that's kind of nice is you can manually enter tags, like on your app on your phone. So I find it, I use that the most at the compost pile. When you're there, maybe nobody else has those lambs, but I'm at the compost pile, and if I don't have my scanner with me, those tags never got recorded before. Now I can just type that in, and it actually gets recapture that data. So that's kind of a handy thing as well. Keep the questions coming. This helps us. So for tech support, as you can see from the video here, Jen and I we're just farmers, we're just producers. So this kind of doesn't come overly naturally to us. We're a little bit nervous tonight here, so it makes it a little bit choppy. So with the tech support, we use AnyDesk Team Viewer. So Jen logs on, we can log on remotely, log on to your computer, basically the same way as we are here. And Jen works one-on-one with producers. So we kind of work on everybody's individual problems and work on teaching producers how to use the software one-on-one. It's kind of a little nicer, a little more personable, a little more comfortable for everybody, I guess. A lot of our tech support is actually, we will do kind of tends to suit whatever the different producers. So we like weekends and evenings. So we kind of go with the flow of what works with everybody. And the tech support's free. So no matter how much tech support you need, shoot a text and we'll work with you to teach you how to work your way through things. I find the software, people, when they dive in, they want to take it all on at once and it gets overwhelming. Slow down and just take one piece at a time and kind of add one piece at a time. So we, get into entering some breedings and some lambings, and then kind of as you get more data into the system, things start making sense and it starts flowing. But it can be pretty overwhelming at first to learn the new system as it is everything. It'd be kind of like starting to do your taxes and expecting it to be perfect right off the bat. It takes time to learn and some dedication, but the tech support and the resources are here. yeah. Um,
Yeah, EweManage does a lot and has a lot of features, but I think if everybody stuck to the basics of just entering lambing dates and weaning weights, and then when you ship them, I think you're far ahead of most producers in Canada. Just keeping it simple. So just, yeah, use the basic stuff first.
There's one more question that came through. It says, is there a way to auto upload app info?
Kind of. So it's all based on CSV files from the mobiles. The in barn mode, like we were kind of trying to show you there, you would take your whole computer to the barn and you would just kind of do it in barn and it's right into the system. Back to the mobiles, it's a CSV file, like I said. And then so Jock was able to program using the OneDrive. So if you have internet in the barn and you upload your CSV file to the cloud, you can bring it in through the cloud on the computer. So it's a couple buttons and you have it all in there. Because it's not live, you do have to confirm your information on that import export screen. So it's kind of a yes and no question answer.
So probably one of the things that most producers find the most challenging is the transferring files back and forth. It's actually very basic computer work, just moving files. So Jen always refers to it as, having a filing cabinet and then, moving your file folders from one drawer to the next. And that's essentially all we're doing. But it's new to a lot of people, including myself. But it's very basic stuff. And once you've done it once, you'll see it's quite simple.
And I would log on with you and show you the step by step.
Yeah. So the challenge with we'd love to automate some of this stuff and make it a little bit faster, kind of like what like an Apple product, but that costs a lot of money. And in programming costs. So to be able to keep our user costs down, on the flip side, now we have to do some very basic file transfers and stuff like that, and learning some stuff like that. So that's where we come with the tech support to teach you how to do that stuff. And once you've done it once, it's quite easy actually. But it takes some time and some dedication to learn some new things. So, but that would probably be the biggest complaint you'll ever hear about EweManage is that file transfer. But for anybody that's dedicated, it's not an issue at all. We have some clients that have bought their first computer and they pick up, and it hasn't been an issue for them either. So that'll come down to a user's dedication. If they want data, they'll work through it. But yeah.
Are there any other questions from our participants this evening? Just a reminder too, if you guys do come up with other questions, when I send out the recording tomorrow, I will include Jen and Chris's email address so that if you think of something afterwards, then you can connect with them offline. Did either you, Jen, or Chris have any kind of final comments?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and I would encourage you to reach out. We'd love to talk to you one-on-one. As you can tell, this is not our area of expertise in this public speaking. So we really enjoy working through stuff one-on-one. And if somebody wants to see the program and have a one-on-one look through some of this, Jen can log on with you personally and walk you through the program, kind of the same as we did tonight, but it's a little different, and answer your questions independently. But no, I thank everybody for the time, and
hope we hear from you shortly, I guess, or visit sometime.
That sounds good. Well, a big thank you to both of yourselves this evening and to all of our participants who joined us. This will conclude the webinar. As I mentioned, tomorrow I will be sending an email that'll have their contact information as well as where you can access the recording.